assaulting the narrative, destroying their lives, unearthing the truth. I want the truth! This is The Truth with John Gordon.
Welcome to The Truth. We've got a lot to get into this week. Donald J. Trump's transition team very much at work. Kash Patel saying he will be ready day one. Now, a reporter, seen here in just a second, said, are you going to go after Trump's political enemies? He said, we are going to be ready to go to work day one. So I don't know what you infer from that quote, but here it is.
Resignation. We look forward to a very smooth transition at the FBI, and I'll be ready to go on day one.
Meanwhile, everybody is making the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. Jeff Bezos is now pledging $1 million to the inauguration committee. Mark Zuckerberg has pledged $1 million to the inauguration committee. And of course, you know, Elon Musk has given $200 million to the Trump campaign and related friendly C4s, or sympathetic C4s, I should say. And it's like, you know, we've been wanting to unite the country, and it's like the whole country is uniting around Trump. Because I think the country has finally become wise to what's been going on. And people don't want to live in a country like the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, or Russia today, or the communist China that we have come to fear and loathe. Speaking of fearing and loathing, well, who are orchestrating these drones that are flying over New York and New Jersey? And, you know, the thing that puzzles me about it, the people who are supposed to be protecting us. So we don't know who it is. We don't know what it is. And you know, and I know that that's just a lie. I happen to have been a pilot since I was 15 years old. I am a pilot today. In fact, I just flew all the way out to California and back for Thanksgiving. I'm fortunate to have a nice ride. But I know aviation. I'm very well acquainted with aviation. I have been to the Atlanta Center and toured it. I've been to the Atlanta Tracon, which actually is the approach and departure control, separate facility from the center. Folks, there is nothing that flies in the continental United States, with rare exception, that is not on the FAA's radar. Now, when I fly, my airplane sends out what is known as a transponder code. That code tells the controllers the call sign on my airplane and the flight plan, reports the flight plan that I have filed, like West Palm Beach to LAX. It will show the controller that on his screen. And if you have ever looked on FlightAware, you with the call sign of an airplane, you can track that airplane anytime it's in the air. So my point is that I know the air traffic control system, I know the radar system, because I have used it for like 60 years. And it used to be very hit or miss. The coverage used to be scattered, and there was no digital information displayed on it. It was just a target on the screen. You'd call up the controller, you'd tell him your position and the discrete code that we call it squawking, which you were transmitting. And then he says, oh yeah, I see you. You're just there south of Atlanta, Hartsfield Airport, 12 miles, and squawking VFR, which is 1200. That's the code that you would squawk. And then if you are checking on for a flight plan or trying to get flight following, as we call it, they will give you a discrete code. You key it in on your transponder, and it then identifies you for that controller and any other controller that looks at it. Why am I explaining all this? Because today there is like nothing in the United States airspace that is not identified. In most areas of the country where there's any concentration of planes, you are required by law to transmit a code. And in most places like busy airspace around New York and New Jersey, you have to be talking to a controller. And they can track you. They do track you. Not surreptitiously. I want them to track me because they'll give me separation from bad weather and other opposing traffic. So, what's the point of all that? The point is they can watch the drones. They can see them take off. They can see them land. Even without the code. It's called a primary target. They can observe every move those drones make. So why are they lying to us? Why is there no transparency? I mean, all we are left to do is speculate. So now you know that spy balloon that left China, floated across the Pacific, went up into Canada, and then floated down into the United States and traversed our country, hovered over our most sensitive nuclear bases, and made its way to the Atlantic, where our very courageous, illegitimate president, Joe Biden, shot it down over the Atlantic after the mission was complete. It feels like deja vu all over again to me. Now, the other possibility is that they're Martians, aliens, and they just don't want to scare the American people. Well, I don't really buy that one. The other option is they're hobbyists. You know, teenage kids out there flying automobile-sized drones. Oh, automobile-sized drones? No, I don't think most teenage kids could afford that. Now, the other thing that is absolutely perplexing to me is why are the drones lighted? Why are they identified with lights? That's the thing I cannot really intellectually problem solve. If I was China and I was flying drones illegally flying drones over the United States, I wouldn't light them because they're easy to identify then from the ground. Now, you don't need to be lighted for the air traffic controller to identify them from the air or from the radar screen. But that's one I don't have the answer to. So if it is a foreign entity, are they just trying to worry us, to create unnecessary fear, uncertainty, and doubt? What would they gain from that? What's the end game? I just don't know. I'm sorry. Maybe you can tell us. 804-778-8888. I would be happy to hear from you. So, drones flying over New Jersey and New York. Do you think that if Trump was already president, that would be happening? I don't think so. At the very least, we would track where they're going, where they go land, and we would have the full force of the military, the FBI, and other departments of the federal government and state government going to intercept them. It would not be hard. So we are left only to ponder and to come up with our own theories so that they can then label us as crazed conspiratorialists while they feed the conspiracies by withholding the information that I think we as the American people are deserving of. Now, I did watch a United States congressman. Where is he from? I think Tennessee. And he said that he has it on good authority that there is an Iranian ship off the coast of the United States and that they are deploying the drones. The State Department has steadfastly denied it. So I don't know. But we'll continue to watch it, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. For the last 3 years, I've told our listeners that January the 6th is the next Russia hoax. It's the next fake. It was the next in a series of fake impeachments and made up charges against Donald Trump. January 6th was an invention of the Democrats to try and prevent Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States so they could label him an insurrectionist. And in the process of doing that, they have killed 4 American citizens, including Ashley Babbitt. She was murdered in cold blood by Michael Byrd, the Capitol Hill policeman that came out of the shadows and shot and killed her. I have thought that people were pushing Ashley Babbitt up and more or less really forcing her through that window. Now you have to understand Ashley Babbitt was, I believe, 5'4", 5'5". She was a very small lady. She was petite, but she was a powerful lady because she served 14 years in the Army. She was a veteran who served our Army in Iraq. 7 years active duty, 7 years in the reserves. She showed up at the Capitol to protest what she believed to have been a stolen election. I agree with her. No surprise there, right? And hey, look, I don't have to convince you. You, our faithful listeners, are among the 80% of America that don't believe Joe Biden was democratically elected president of the United States. In fact, the people that say that he was democratically elected, I don't believe it. Schiff, Schumer, Pelosi, they all know they're lying. They've unleashed 4 years of unmitigated hell on this country. And I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for accountability. Yes, I do. I do want them investigated and for charges to be brought, appropriate charges to be brought, if it can be proven that they violated the laws of this country, if they abused their authority and violated their oath. And I believe that the conduct of many of those people transcends violating the law and is treasonous. And the penalty for treason in this country is death. And as I've said before, if we investigate and not do what the Democrats did and just make stuff up, I only want the truth. I only want to know 100% incontrovertibly whether Joe Biden was an illegitimate president of the United States. I want the proof. Either he was or he wasn't. Either he got the 81 million votes that they claim, or it was a lie. Now, Donald Trump got the most popular votes of any modern Republican president, and the most, I'm pretty sure, the most electoral college votes since Reagan. I think that's correct. Yet we're told that Biden got 81 million votes. No president, no candidate for president's ever gotten 81 million votes, and neither did he. There should be a consequence for stealing the foundation of this country. There should be consequences for staging a fake insurrection and putting provocateurs in the crowd. You think I'm making stuff up? Ask Michael Horowitz. He is the Inspector General. That's a name that should be familiar to you because he is the Inspector General charged with overseeing the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He is the one who reported that there is no evidence of collusion with Russia. This country has lost its way, and it all points back to the alphabet agencies, principally the FBI and the CIA, that operate in the shadows. They have made themselves, they have insulated themselves from oversight because they are always engaged in an ongoing investigation and can't talk about that. And it's got to stop. Kash Patel, welcome. Do your job. Can you stand up to the evil? But folks, sunshine is the greatest disinfectant there is known to evilness in government, and it's time to let the sun shine in. President Trump has assembled an army of truth tellers, an army of patriots, an army of people who are determined to get this country back on the right track. And it just simply cannot happen fast enough. January the 20th almost seems too far away right now because you've got this evilness continuing to infect our country at the highest levels. And these people are the ones that are providing long-range missiles to the Ukraine, which is now firing them into the heartland of Russia. And Putin is promising to return fire with intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, the most powerful missiles known to man, as well as, I guess, second most powerful, as well as hypersonic weapons. I don't even understand it all. I just know they've never been used before, and that it is a giant step up the ladder of escalation. And these people who are in charge of our military, our State Department, our intelligence agencies, and the White House are rotten to the core. I don't think they're defending the Ukraine. I think there's something else afoot. And I think they're playing a very, very dangerous game. Donald Trump cannot get into the White House too soon for me. And we've got to protect him for the next 40 days. And I hope he has his own private security looking over the shoulders of the Secret Service. I believe that he does. I am told that he does. So they've got to keep him safe. Likewise for Elon Musk, he's got to have a bullseye on his back because he is a disruptor. He has made so many people mad, it's not even funny. Every freaking legacy automobile country in the world has got to be mad at Musk. Putin is mad at Musk because he delivered Starlinks to the Ukraine so the Ukrainian people could communicate with each other when they took out the internet. And the deep state is mad at him because he's threatening to eradicate, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, a third of the national budget, including 100% of the deficit. Donald Trump cannot become president soon enough. And Vivek says they're going to remove $2 million. I'm sorry. Did I say million? Trillion. If I said million, it was a slip of the tongue. $2 trillion from the budget, and that is 100% of the deficit. Now, I don't know what the ripple effects of that will be on our nation's economy. You know, when they spend money like that, we're told it is what? Stimulus. So I don't know whether to believe it or not. What happens if you suck $2 trillion out of our national economy? What does that do to the economy? I don't know. Somebody who knows economics better than I do needs to call us up at 804-778-8888 and tell us what the effect of that is. Now, that is of the borrowing that is being done. I'm sure that is going to reduce inflation to zero. The question is it going to cause deflation, recession? I think it's a high wire act, frankly. And I don't know whether you can just take out $2 trillion on day one without causing unintended consequences. But people smarter than I am are running those numbers right now. And they're not doing it on a spreadsheet. They're doing it on a supercomputer. And they've got the best brains of the country that are working on it. But what I do know is that if they can reduce government spending, I'm not talking about deficit now, I'm talking about actually reduce spending that will return money to the taxpayers in the form of reduced taxes, which Trump is promising us, coupled with reduced regulation. I know what that's going to do to the economy. It's going to light it on fire. We're going to enter an age of abundance where we will truly be the most prosperous people in the history of mankind. Now that's exciting. Who doesn't want prosperity? Who doesn't want free speech? Who doesn't want our Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment and all of the rights, privileges, and freedoms that go along with them? Folks, I think we are entering the potential of the greatest 4 years of my lifetime. And I just hope I can stay in good health and good spirits and good presence of mind to enjoy it. Because I really do think that the opportunity that is facing this country could be some of the greatest ever. I said on the platform, on the dais with President Trump in 2020, that he was the best president of my lifetime. I don't think we've seen anything yet. Just wait until he gets going on January the 21st. One of the first things that he needs to do, and he says he hasn't given us the specifics. I think he said we're looking at it. And in Trump speak, that means we're getting ready. Release the January 6th political prisoners. It is long overdue. And I'm telling you, the people's lives that these Democrats have ruined is going to relegate them to an eternity in hell. There's one kid, you've heard me talk about him, Brandon Fellows. I believe he's 21, 22 years old. He went into the Capitol, gave a self-conducted tour through the Hall of Statues, and left. He adversely affected no property, spoke congenially to the Capitol Hill police with whom he encountered, was not asked to leave. I think he was there maybe 20 minutes. They sent this poor kid to jail, prison, for 3 years. I think 6 months in solitary confinement. This is evil. This is sheer, unadulterated evil. And there is nothing too bad that can happen to these people that brought these horrible, undeserved consequences to the victims. Treason is an appropriate finding if the evidence supports my theory of the case. I believe it was all orchestrated to stop Donald Trump from becoming president because they want power and they are greedy and they want to be able to continue to engage in insider trading and to make their ill-begotten gains at the expense of other victims. Because that's what you create. When you engage in insider trading, you are gaining at the expense of the seller. Because you have knowledge that they don't have. If they had the same knowledge that you had, then they wouldn't sell. Or they would sell. One or the other. It depends on what the information is. Like when all those members of the Senate and Congress sold their stocks just prior to the announcement of the COVID virus. So many of them did that and got caught. And then they denied it. Oh, no, my stocks are in a blind trust. I had no knowledge beforehand. Yeah, right. So, I'm conflicted on what the remedy for that is. Truthfully, I think we treat our leaders horribly. We mistreat them badly, i.e. Donald Trump, and I can think of others like Richard Nixon, John Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, that is. And, and this is going to be hard for a lot of people, perhaps, I don't know. But I think we pay them horribly. I can't remember what a congressman makes. I think it's $220 a year. Governor of Georgia makes $250 a year, I think. I think the president only makes $350, something like that. Anthony Fauci, now, he had a pretty good income. He was the highest person in federal government before he retired and is now being chauffeured by his security detail. At your expense, by the way. But, in these days and times, you can't live in Washington, D.C. with any decent standard of living on $225,000 a year. The travel back and forth, some of that may be paid for by the government, I'm not sure. But living, food, getting around, you're not going to get rich serving in the United States Congress. I am told that several congressmen room with other congressmen so they can share the expenses. So, you can make the argument, you can make one of two arguments, actually. One argument is that you end up getting exactly what you pay for, and you end up with a lot of incompetence. The other argument, and I think that both arguments are true, is that it's only a rich person's game. You got to be independently wealthy to be able to go to Washington and serve in the Congress. And whichever one of those is true, I think it's absolutely wrong. I think we have an obligation to fairly compensate our elected officials. And so what do? They pass laws that give themselves benefits, exorbitant benefits. So that's basically how they end up getting compensated. And then we rail on them for having these lavish benefits. But if I were king for a day, I would just correct it. I would give them a high salary, a livable wage commensurate with their position in life. Most people go to Washington and they sacrifice. Most people who are named ambassadors, unless they are career diplomats, do so at great expense. First of all, before you're even considered for an ambassador, you've got to be on the winning side of the presidential election, and you have got to have given a lot of money. And then when you get to your ambassadorship, you've got to go to that country and you pay all of your expenses, and out of your own pocket, you pay to entertain foreign diplomats. So that's just the way it's set up. And, I don't like that because it excludes people that don't have the money to make huge donations to political campaigns, who may be really smart and really patriotic and really capable of fairly representing our country. Now, I don't think that the people that are ambassadors typically fall into the category of incompetence, but it's a select, very small club. So I would like to see that change. I'd like to see the money that we pay representatives in Congress to be improved. I would like to see, when I was in elementary school or junior high school, I remember learning that we overpaid our elected officials, and especially judges. We overpaid them. Why? So they would not be as susceptible to bribery or corruption. But it sure seems like anecdotally, every time you turn around, somebody is talking about the Congress of this United States being incredibly corrupt. And we also hear anecdotally that they live in a dangerous world because if they don't fall in line, they run the risk of being killed. I think we treat our leaders very shabbily. And it's time for the American people to stand up and say, no, we've got your back. Just let's have a month of amnesty for every member of Congress. Go before a court reporter and give a deposition and tell it all. Tell every person who has tried to blackmail you, come clean. We'll pass a special law that anything that you say in this deposition will be held in strict confidence, that you will not be prosecuted unless you have actually harmed another human being in a material way, or unless you have stolen money from another person. I don't know. We'll have to work the details of this kind of outlandish fantasy that I've got. But if we created a way for them all to come clean, all 400 plus members of Congress, all 100 members of the United States Senate, come clean. Tell it all, brother. Go to confession. That's it. Go to confession. Maybe we'll have priests commissioned to take confession. And then we provide them protection. And then we go after the bad guys. We go after the people who are blackmailing or bribing members of our government. And we just clean it up. It's just like a windshield wiper on the windshield of your car. We just clean off all the dirt. We get it squeaky clean. And we start anew with a country that you and I grew up in, where we believed in the rule of law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and God our Savior. Fantasy or possibility? I think there's a possibility if we, the people, start writing our congressmen and senators and attorney general and FBI director and tell them that's what we want. And if enough people do it by the millions, If all 200,000 people listening to this broadcast today in Atlanta, Nashville, Memphis, Richmond, Norfolk, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Morgantown, West Virginia, on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and another 10 or 15,000 people who listen to us on our live stream. And I wish that a lot of you 200,000 people on the radio would go to YouTube and just subscribe to our channel and like it, so that we can get up on the algorithm and reach more people, which will help us get better guests and give you even better programming than the spectacular programming we bring you every Saturday. Help me help you. Just go and subscribe and like us. One of our listeners says, well, I don't have the money to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. Go to Getter, Rumble, YouTube, and subscribe to our channel. You can do it in less time than it's taken me to tell you about it. All right. So back to our monologue. Where were we? Maxwell Urich. That's the key to Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to dog this. I am already on it. He's the person that I've told you about who drove the van from Mesa, Arizona. The van was titled to Urich Ammunition. And it sounds like something out of the Twilight Zone. But I've got YouTubers and citizen journalists who are on it. I'm reaching out to them, and I'm going to come back and talk to you about this. But we've got to get to the truth of Butler, Pennsylvania. That is one of the things that we need transparency on. And the way that Ronald Rowe and Director Cheadle are behaving, dodge and weave and pivot and cover up is all you can say. And, let's don't forget Director Ray. He's the one who said he's seen no evidence of confidential human informants, or that he couldn't talk about it in January the 6th. And that he cannot find any evidence to support that there could have been a second shooter in Butler. And that Thomas Matthew Crooks acted alone. BS. And we can't get rid of him fast enough either. I wish you would go ahead, finish shredding your documents, Director. Go ahead. You probably have worn out the shredder. You probably had to get a new motor for the one you've got. Cleanse your hard drives. Get rid of all the evidence, because we know that you do not tell the truth. I know you don't tell the truth. And we've caught you in the lies. Michael Horowitz and his IG report on January the 6th all but proved that you were lying to Congress when you said that that there were not FBI people in the Capitol that day working undercover. I think that's what you said. I'm pretty sure that's what you said. And you were evasive about confidential human sources being in the Capitol, and now we know that there were 26 of them.
The Truth with John Gordon.
I woke up on top of the world this morning.
We break down today's political landscape and feature interviews with key guests.
It doesn't matter if they call you a or a
to uncover the real story behind current events in the United States.
Of course, saw a rifle pointing through a fence with a chain link. Okay, so
you're a good man. I just want to give you a compliment because you have courage to stay with the truth.
I hate injustice.
This is great fun. I like you and your ideas. So let's do some more of this.
As our listeners know, I have been a follower and aficionado of Tesla for some time. And our channel skews and our listeners skew mostly to the right. Climate change is not something that you care to talk about, let alone engage in. I've made the point that for me, Tesla is not about climate change. It's about leaving the world in a better place from which we found it. And frankly, it's just a better mousetrap. So I've gone out and found one of the preeminent YouTubers who follows Tesla every day of his life, like I do. His name is Brian White, and he has a channel called Futureaza. Brian, welcome to The Truth.
Great to be here. I'm very excited about this. And you're right. It's not about the green mission. When Ford was building what became the Mustang Mach-E, their original thing was, we're going to push this as a green car. And then they got behind the wheel and said, this is really fun. That's what we're going to push. And that's what people resonated with.
Well, I bought a Model X a little over 2 years ago. It's 2.5 years old now. I drove it this morning to an appointment in Delray, Florida, which is exactly 18 miles from here. Voice commanded, navigate to my destination, pulled out of my garage, hit the button, and away we went. I didn't touch it. It absolutely delivered me to the entrance of the parking lot. It's amazing.
And it is amazing. The other day I drove 12 hours from just north of Portland all the way to Santa Rosa, California. And 12 hours driving a normal car would leave you exhausted. You'd need a day to rest. But I use the full self-driving. I have version 12, the latest version of the 12s, and it does great. It makes the drive pleasant. It gives you an opportunity to relax a little bit on the drive. You have to watch, you have to pay attention for safety reasons, of course. But it is like it has changed my life.
So you and I know exactly what we're talking about. For our listeners, we're talking about Tesla's autonomous driving. They call it full self-driving, and it's been released to the general public for, I guess, a little over a year now, I think.
Well, it depends
Maybe
on
longer.
which version. Yeah. I guess, yeah, supervised FSD is about a year old now, but yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And so it was pretty clunky when I first got it, and it was a little uncomfortable surrendering control to this computer. And there were a lot of opportunities that I needed to make an intervention. Either the car got confused. I mean, it was horrible at roundabouts. It was not good at changing lanes if there was a lot of traffic, on and on and on. But today, I just got notified, Brian, that I have version 13 waiting, and I just need to go out there and connect to the internet and download it, which is amazing to me too. For our listeners, again, this automobile receives over-the-air updates on about a monthly basis, where the software is actually updated over the airwaves. You don't have to take it in for an appointment, no service. Do you know that in 2.5 years, I have had one service call? And the service call I had was because the steering wheel, the leather had delaminated, and it was really ratty, and the car cost a lot of money. And so I was pissed, but I just surrendered and said, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And then one day I was bored, so I called the service line up at Tesla. And before I could even finish explaining the problem, he said, oh, that's a known issue. Make an appointment, bring it in, we'll repair it, we'll replace it for free. And by the way, with the new steering wheel, you get a horn actually in the middle of the steering column, which was one of my other pet peeves. You had to hit a button to hit the horn. And when you need the horn, you can't be looking for the dang button. So now you have a traditional horn. Here's the kicker. I was sitting at home working, and the phone rang. And this guy on the other line said, hey, this is Sam. I'm with Tesla. And I know you've got an appointment to bring your car in next week. I happen to have a free hour this morning. I'd like to drop by your house with your permission and replace it in your driveway. I said, come on, Sam. He said, well, I'll be there between 9 and 10. He called me at 10 minutes of 9 and said, hey, I'm in the driveway. 30 minutes later, the steering wheel was replaced. I had the horn, no charge. That is service.
It's fantastic. Not every service center is as good as every other one, but they are. My experience has also been very good. I haven't had much in terms of issues, but when I have even questions, they will gladly answer them. And when I was in there one day talking with the guys, a man came in and said, yeah, I broke the little clip on my visor and it's out of warranty. And they said, well, we can replace it for you. It's going to be, like $60, or if you want, I can sell you the clip right now for $3. The guy said, I'll take it. $3.
I'll take door number 2 for $3.
Yeah. So they're quite, when the motivation is we want to sell more cars, rather than a lot of the dealerships for sure, their motivation is we just want to squeeze every penny out of you. The service experience can be different.
I've had absolutely no service. Not one call except for the steering wheel. And they exceeded my expectations wildly. So we are speaking at a time that the stock TSLA just hit a record high.
Very
You
exciting.
didn't know that.
I did not. I hadn't checked the price today. It must have happened today.
It happened within the last hour, and it reached, let me tell you real quick, $409 has been the high for the day. It's currently at 408. We're recording this prior to our Saturday broadcast. But nevertheless, that puts the market value of Tesla well over $1 trillion.
Yeah. It's got to be close to 1.3-ish. This is something, we've been in a few years of loading the spring, as it were. If you were to go back to the previous all-time high a few years back and say, by the way, I am from the future, I can tell you that over the next 2, 3, 4 years, the company will hit all their targets. They will release the products they said they were going to. They will increase deliveries as expected. Oh, and also, what are you going to do? You'd say, well, I'm going to invest. Well, you'd have been down for a long time because the stock moved sideways. But there's only so long the stock can stay down before the fundamentals catch up. Is the company executing? The answer is yes. It's been yes all along. It is still going full steam. So at some point, it has to break out again. You were an early investor. You saw years of it trading sideways before it finally blew out at the end of 2019. And, you saw something in the company that others didn't. I saw it as well. That's why we invested early, and we didn't sell because we saw something and we knew it was there. And a lot of the concerns that we had back in 2019 have gone away. Things like long-term debts that were going to become convertible. If the stock price wasn't high enough, well, it was high enough. Those debts are now gone and the company's in great shape.
Well, as I shared with you, I bought Tesla in 2018, maybe 2017, somewhere in there, for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is, I was obsessed with the concept of a full self-driving automobile, autonomy, and the implications that it has for humanity and the way that we live and the opportunities to solve global crises, including reducing the number of deaths on the highways every year. I think there are 2 million fatal accidents worldwide per year. There are 43,000 in the United States. If we can reduce that number by half, it's worth it. But one of the uniquenesses of this technology is that for some reason, people have this notion that it has to be perfect or else it's not acceptable. So we can't eliminate just 20,000 deaths and be content. We have to eliminate 43,000 before it's going to be accepted in the broad stream. I think I'm probably exaggerating a bit, but the regulators' mindset seems to be you can't have any flaws. Is that your perception?
I wouldn't say it's the regulators' perception. The regulators are happy with the math. Is it safer? Yes, then go ahead. A good example I heard is one way that Tesla has been able to circumvent a lot of the regulators' concerns is by implementing it one chip at a time and saying, well, we have these cameras. Is it okay to use them? Yes. It sees a stop sign. Is it okay if we hit the brakes if the driver's not hitting the brakes? Well, yes, you can do that. Well, we have lane keep. Is that okay to have lane? Well, yes, you can do. And pretty soon you're halfway there. And then you get to have the conversation of, look, we have the data. We have gathered it. We can show you that it is safer than a regular driver without it. Can we keep pushing forward? And so far the answer's been yes.
So where are we today, do you think, in the evolution?
So where we're at, I'm very excited to see if you actually got version 13 or if it's just the holiday update, but version 13 is going out and version 13 has added it has closed a lot of the gaps. So with version 13, you can be that story you told where you went to the dentist. Next time, if it is version 13, you can turn it on before you leave the driveway. And when you get to your doctor's office, it will pull into a parking spot for you and you have done nothing. That is the next step. That is where we are today. Tesla on October 10th had a big event in California where they showed off the Cybercab. And the Cybercab was running version 13. It is end to end. It does the whole thing. And it's photons into the cameras and controls out to the car. And in that car, there is no steering wheel because you don't need it. And this is going to change everything because The approach that other manufacturers are taking is, let's take an all-purpose car that can do everything and then add $50,000, $100,000 in additional equipment to make it do the one thing we actually want it to do. So you end up with a car that's going to cost $150,000 versus Tesla's plan is to make a cybercab that can only do one thing: drive you around in comfort, easily, simply, and they're going to do it for $25,000. You're coming out of the gate with $100,000 advantage per unit on a car that's very simple to build. And this is going to really take Teslas to the next level because it will cost them less than $25,000 to build it. And the early models, I'm just going to tell you now, are going to cost 50. So they're going to have a 50% markup, meaning for every cybercab Tesla sells, they'll have enough money to keep a cybercab for their own fleet. And that becomes a cash bomb.
So would you be a cybercab owner and put that car out as a rental?
I think I would. I'm in a pretty small town and there's not a lot of good coverage. I don't think Uber even exists in my town. I know it has in the past, but one time I looked to see if I could get a ride to the airport and Uber said, there's nobody here. So wouldn't it be great to just have one sitting outside? Sometimes disappears and comes back with some money. It's like having a bird dog.
I like it. So tell our listeners the whole Tesla story in just a few words. It's far beyond just an automobile, right? Can you enumerate all the things that they're working on?
So Tesla takes a first principles approach. For anyone in engineering, they know what that means. Most people don't. The idea is, don't start with what's being done today. Ask what the outcome desired is and start from scratch. That's why the Cybertruck looks so weird, is they said, if a truck didn't exist today, what would we do to build it? And that meant that they came up with a very different design philosophy that's cheaper to build, easier to build, quicker to build, and gives you the same or better results. And everything Tesla does is like that. The Tesla philosophy is start with the answer and figure out how to get it rather than grabbing a bunch of pieces and saying, does this solve anything? So when you look at the Cybercab, on the surface, you could say, well, it looks like any other car out there. Well, a normal car, like the original Model 3 had, the body itself was 380 pieces. That's a lot of pieces to have to put together. That's a long assembly line. When they got to the Model Y, they said, let's do a structural battery pack. That body got down to 180 pieces. That is savings, that is time savings, that is cost, that is labor, that is fewer robots in the assembly process. And then now that they're on the Cybercab, I had a chance to talk with 5 of the lead engineers just last week. The Cybercab only has 80 pieces. So if you're driving a Buick or a Cadillac or a Mercedes, you've got hundreds of pieces that goes into the body, but this Cybercab has got 80 pieces. Think of how short that assembly line is. Think of how much cheaper it's going to be to build. Think of how much simpler it will be to repair. They've reinvented every part of it, from the wiring to the drivetrain system to the batteries. They've done it all. And the fact that they're the only EV car company that's actually profitable speaks volumes.
And I don't get the sense that the legacy automakers are even making an effort to follow in Tesla's footsteps in terms of reducing the number of parts in their cars. I get the sense that they're just like, no more R&D, no more investment, just harvest what we've got and then work on the electric vehicle.
You are almost entirely on the right track there. What they're doing is slightly worse than what you expected. They're trying to incorporate some parts of it, but not all parts of it. Imagine if, a half measure that will achieve nothing. So they're trying to take some of Tesla's factory innovations and use them to build cars that are still built the old-fashioned way. And it's like, well, great, you've got the new tool, but you're using it on the wrong thing. That's not going to help you. So they are going in the wrong direction in a lot of ways.
So for transportation, they've obviously got the 4 models of the Tesla automobile. They're working on the, what do we call it? The robo-taxi. They've got the Cyber truck, and then they've got a tractor trailer. What do we call that?
The semi, just the Tesla semi.
Just the Tesla semi. Simple enough. But that's not all the company is working on, is it?
No, sir. No,
so
sir.
tell us more.
They've also of all the crazy things, they've got a robot they're working on, an actual humanoid robot. And this was unveiled, probably 2.5 years ago now. And it was met with thunderous laughter. How dare you? No one wants this. No one cares about it. And here we are just a couple years later, and there are over 100 robotics companies actively pursuing their own version of it. And every week you see new demos from new companies. Oh, this one's got great fingertips. This one's got great balance. This one's got something innovative. Does this mean that they are ahead of Tesla? Well, no, because we haven't seen their latest demo. And Tesla's now keeping their information a little more private, because every time they would show something, the competition would go through it frame by frame and say, oh, this is what we need to do. So Tesla is doing great stuff. Just a day or two ago, they released a video of it walking on uneven terrain with a blindfold. And at one point it slips, but it doesn't fall. It catches itself.
I watched that. It's
that
phenomenal.
You look at it and you go, that's because it's great in a factory if everything's flat and smooth, but the world has hills, it has inclines, it has broken terrain. So this takes it out of the lab. And the difference between Tesla and these other companies, let's say I give you 5 companies and I say, I'm trying to pick which one I'm going to invest in. Here's the demos. And you look at them and all the demos are just as good as each other. The Tesla one is the winner because they have the ability to manufacture like nobody else. They thought of things that other companies didn't. Before they built the first robot, they ran it through the crash test simulator they use on the cars. And the other companies were like, oh, well, we just built it. And when it fell over, fixed it. So they were able to avoid a lot of silly mistakes just because they have all these core competencies in-house.
And today, the Tesla is the safest automobile on the road, correct?
Yes, it is. And if you look at the rankings, it holds the top spots. And for that matter, it's the most American-made car. I think Tesla holds 3 or 4 of the top 10, the top 3 or 4 spots out of the top 10 most American-made, because the batteries come from Nevada, the motors come from either Nevada or California, and they're built in Texas and California.
And the Tesla Model Y is the most popular car in the world.
In the world, a car of that price has never been number one. It can't be. It's always been the economy cars that can sell in every market, but the Model Y represents such a good value. And because it's made at factories in Germany for the European market, in Shanghai for the Asian market, they're able to keep it close to where it's going to be sold. They don't have huge lead times for deliveries, which adds to cost, which adds to import and export tariffs. They've got the ability to move these cars at prices that make sense in every market, and it's just good value.
So what do you see the evolution of the Optimus robot being? What's the trajectory?
Boy, it is really tough to see. I'd say that's just over the horizon. I can see the smoke, but I can't see the land just yet. It's going to change everything, because I have a lot of little odd jobs around the house I'd love to get done, but I don't have the, $300 or $500 a contractor would charge me to come out just to trim the hedges. I'll trim the hedges eventually, but I'm not going to do it today. If I had a bot, or if I had access to one that charges $5 an hour or $1 an hour, I would have them done today. All it would do, it wouldn't change much apart from the quality of my life. Think of elder care. When my grandma lost her vision, she moved in with my sister because we didn't want to send her to a home. And that was a burden. But if you could stay at home longer, have something there to fold your laundry and make sure there's no obstacles in your path, you could stay at home longer. You could have more of your freedom to keep in your life. So it is going to change anything. The biggest job in the country right now is driving. Tesla will replace that. And that's not, that's going to put 1 million people out of work. Well, the workforce is aging and retiring, so natural attrition should meet that just fine. But the real biggest job in the country is anything that uses a human being's labor. And that's what Optimus is set to replace, is anything that can be done with human labor.
I think they've said repetitive task, boring task, and dangerous task.
And dangerous task. Yeah.
Repairing a roof, for instance.
Yeah. Deep sea welding. Why not have that?
Well, now, as I understand it, Tesla is intending on deploying 1,000 Optimus robots to work in its own factory in 2025.
And isn't that something? Because you need the training data, you need the training experience. What customer is going to let us do it? Oh, I know, us. And that's where the advantage comes into play. If I were to, let's say I had an autonomous car company and I brought it to you and I said, I want you to invest in this. And I showed you the software and you see, this is brilliant. It's definitely going to work. All it needs is training data. You would ask me, Brian, where are you going to get the training data? And I'd say, I have no idea. And it's going to cost billions.
And where does
Because
Tesla get its training?
from you and me, and every car sold has this software in it. It comes free with autopilot that is better than any other company's higher advanced expensive autonomous systems. And it's got 9 cameras on the car, and it gathers anonymous data every day on how does a human drive? What does a human do? They needed there was a problem where it couldn't recognize stop signs if they were partially covered by branches. So they sent a request to the network saying, get me pictures of occluded stop signs. And by the next morning, they had tens of thousands of pictures that cars like yours and mine had taken over the intervening time of exactly that. And for a long time, humans would go through and label them until the network got good enough to recognize it on their own. Those labelers are gone, and good, because that's a terrible job. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, doing CAPTCHA puzzles all day. So that's what Tesla's doing. They've got the compute advantage. They've got the training data advantage. They've got the best engineers in the world, and the results show.
So we're talking to Brian White. He has a YouTube channel called Futureaza, and you've been doing this since 2012. Is that right, Brian?
Well, I've been following Tesla since 2012. I haven't been doing a channel. The channel
Right, but
started.
you've been studying this stuff
Oh
since
yeah,
2012.
oh for sure, yes sir. And
So over a decade.
even though my channel is only 4 years old, the spreadsheets that I was doing, analyzing different car companies, analyzing the factory construction, I was doing that just for myself. And at some point I realized I'm putting so much work into this, I might as well publish it. So that's how the whole thing came about.
So I was sharing with Brian, and I were actually speaking before we started recording the segment, and we both concluded, well, I concluded that we both probably need to get out and get a life for ourselves, because I wake up every morning and I watch Dylan Loomis from Electrified. I watch Stephen Mark Ryan from Solving the Money Problem. I watch Brian White, Futureaza, and I also watch Brighter with Herbert. I think the thing that I really enjoy about Brighter with Herbert and Teslaraza is that you guys kind of study the technology and the engineering that goes into these products, more so than the economics. But do you have any sense for where the economics are headed, where the value of this company is headed, and when we'll get, is there a top? What is the top? When will we get there? And what will it mean to us as investors?
Those are fantastic questions, and those are great channels. Dylan Loomis is the reason that my channel succeeded, by the way. He was the one who linked to me and told everyone to go watch me when my channel was just starting out. He's a very good guy.
Dylan is a wonderful guy, and he's been a guest on our show a couple of times. And he and I just texted each other yesterday, in fact. He's a wonderful spirit. I'm crazy about Dylan.
He is. And Herbert has an engineering background. He did software, app development, all that kind of thing. So he's looking at it from the analytical side. What is the top? Well, as you know, let's jump back in our time machine. No company has ever been worth $1 trillion before. It can't happen. It doesn't happen. But if you look at the stocks today, you'll see that, quite a few are worth substantially more than $1 trillion. Well, the Dow will never hit 10,000. It did. Of course it did. So what is the top? Well, the first key is, the theoretical top is whatever the biggest company is today. So that means Tesla could 3x from here and still just be within normal bounds, nothing unprecedented. But if you look at the real question is, how big is the market? How many widgets can you sell? You and I sell widgets. How many can we sell? Well, there's only 1 million sold every year in the whole world. So the market cap, the maximum is 1 million. But what if we found a way to make it so that everyone wanted one? Every human being gets one widget. Okay, well, now our market's 8 billion. With the bots, what is the limit? With with autonomy, if Tesla gets even 10 or 20% of all transportation on four wheels, that is an ocean of money. If they get even 10% of what the cumulative human labor is, that is an ocean of money. So the problem with trying to predict how high it could go is as soon as you start crunching real numbers, no matter how low you set them, they start looking crazy almost immediately because the value is enormous. If you can build a robot for $25,000 that can do $30,000 to $50,000 of labor per year, it's crazy. It makes internships look like the worst deal because you have to train them. If I've got 100 jobs in my factory and my stamping guy is sick today, do I have anyone else here who can do that? Well, with robots, the answer is yes, because all of them know every job. I have to teach them once, and now all of them know how to do the job. So there's no more having to overstaff and undertrain and overtrain and even spend time on training. It just is gonna work. So the question, if the question is how big can it get, the answer is, I mean, what job can it not do?
So, what do you think is up with the Wall Street analyst? Like yourself, we just talked about it. I watch this stuff every single day of my life and multiple times during the day. And then you watch these analysts, and what is so obvious to you and me, they seem to be clueless on. What's up with that? What do you think?
It is a combination of factors. One is I do think they are spread too thin. I've seen, well, I'm a auto industry analyst. I cover 30 companies. Well, how well can you cover 30 of anything? Now, I do cover companies other than Tesla. But I do so once or twice a quarter. I follow the news on all the different brands, but to ask me to put together a financial report on someone other than Tesla, I would tell you I need a week to put it together because it's a lot of work to do it well. And their job isn't to do it well, it's just to do it. So the first part is they are lazy. We saw an analyst this week who upgraded their rating on their price target on Tesla because we've finally experienced FSD ourselves. It's been out for ages. You're just now experiencing it. That is lazy. If I was paying for your advice, I would be furious. But the real answer, I think, is that their goal isn't to be right. Their goal is to be exciting. They want to tell you to buy and they want to tell you to sell, and they want you to do both as often as possible because transactions are how they're paid. When you and I put our money in and leave it there, they're not getting paid on that. They're only getting paid when we buy and sell. So they need money to continue moving, even if it's not in the client's best interest.
That's a good look behind the curtain. I have to agree with you. And I have no doubt that tomorrow morning, all the major analysts will up their price targets. And they basically seem to me just to follow the moves of the stock. And they're always lagging it. And so I put very little value in anything that they have to say. Jim Cramer, who I actually like, is bullish one day and bearish the next. He just sort of seems to go with the wind, whichever direction it's going in. So Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are heading a new Department of Government. It's actually an extra Department of Government. It's not part of the federal government. They just call it a department called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. You think they have a chance?
It's tricky because I think they're going to end up being hamstrung by Congress. These are two, I mean, for those who don't know anything about Vivek, he is a very successful entrepreneur, ground up, did it himself, was very successful. These are two people who understand how businesses work and how to be efficient, but businesses and government are not the same thing. And you and I can agree that here's 50 things we need to cut from the budget. They don't make sense. But all 50 of those take place in a congressional district. And politicians are stubborn. We can find great examples of that. You might like your member of Congress, and you should, because they are going to fight tooth and nail when it comes to cuts in your district. But the problem is all of these cuts are coming in someone's district, and all of the members of Congress will fight to keep each individual thing going as well as they can. DOGE is expected to present a detailed report by, I think it was July, or maybe it was July of the following year, but they have a deadline, and I think they'll get it done, and they'll get it done early. And I'm confident there will be some things on it that that are doable, that are sufficiently non-contentious that they can actually get them through. But the big items are going to be real tough sells. And Congress is famously, there's a phrase to describe things that are difficult. It's like harder than an act of Congress.
Well, I think there is a difference this time. And as much as I dislike it, when George Soros flexes his muscle and spreads his money around for things that I abhor, I am excited that Elon Musk has said, don't mess with us. Don't push back on us, because if you do, you're going to get primaried. So these guys are playing for keeps, and Trump has gotten a tremendous mandate going into the 47th presidency of the United States. I'm optimistic that we're going to see some really important, significant change. We've got to deal with this in lunatic deficit spending, $2 trillion just this year. They're saying they're going to reduce the budget by $2 trillion. That gets rid of the deficit. Then we can start having a balanced budget. And that is real change that we desperately need. Because in 2028, the interest payments on that debt is going to be the biggest line item of the federal budget. We cannot allow that to persist. Sorry to get political on you.
Politics is important, but it is difficult, and it gets people very emotional. I stick to policy over politics, because what we just discussed just a second ago, that was all policy. When we're discussing regulation, we can agree that regulators can be weird, but it's a matter of policy. And the beauty of a lot of those regulations, especially when it comes to autonomous vehicles, is they're not laws. They can be amended with a swipe of a pen, and the interpretations of certain things that are codified can be adjusted accordingly. There is a tough road ahead. Trimming out trillions will be a Herculean task, but if there's anyone up to it, I think it's these two guys.
Well, I like your approach very much. I heard Rubin from the Rubin Report this morning quoting a Hollywood A-lister. He said, we can discuss differences of opinions on policy without discussing our differences as human beings. And that resonated with me. And I appreciate your willingness to engage with me today, Brian. It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope you'll come back on soon and often, because I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think you've really done a good service for our listeners to help bring them along and educate all of us on Tesla.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been a blast for me, and, keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much. And I wish you a happy holiday and a safe holiday season, and just keep that FSD on when you're traveling the roads.
I will do it.
I want you to know how grateful I am to each one of our listeners and viewers of our live stream. We really don't take this airtime for granted. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to come to you each week with our insights into the news of the day. As I'm fond of saying, we watch the news so you don't have to. We also would like to encourage our radio listeners to go to rumble.com, youtube.com, and getter.com, search for John Gordon Truth, and subscribe to our channel. That little act of kindness on your part would go so far, because it would help us expand our reach. And for a limited time only, if you will subscribe to our channel and then email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com, we will put you in a raffle for this once-in-a-lifetime Trump hat signed by none other than Rudy Giuliani. Wow. And that's the truth. And thank you for your consideration.
Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I've been looking forward to our guest today, John Gordon. He's the host of a syndicated radio show, The Truth with John Gordon. He's a graduate from Mercer University Law School in Georgia, business owner, entrepreneur, and has worked in journalism and also as a reporter. And he ran with the endorsement of President Donald Trump for the Republican nomination to be Georgia's Attorney General in 2022. So we're honored to have him with us today. So, John, good to see you. How are you?
Great, Andy, and happy holidays to you, and thanks for having me on.
In your podcast lately, you talked about what's going on now with the murder of the healthcare CEO, United Healthcare CEO, and, of course, now the apprehension of the suspect. What's your take and your details?
Well, in general, the insurance community, the industry is really out of control. I have personally experienced a denial of a claim. I don't know how much into the weeds you want to get, but I had hail damage. They said, "Oh, well, the flashing on the roof has obviously been damaged by hail, but the shingles are not damaged, so we're denying the claim." And it's, 100K, and it just makes you mad as hell because I've been paying insurance for 30 years, never had a claim before, and then they just play these games. So I appreciate the angst. Of course, violence is not acceptable in an organized society. And I think there's so many tragedies that are caught up in this murder. Obviously, the victim, his late estranged wife, his children, his loved ones and friends, family, extended family, business colleagues. I mean, the grief that this guy has wreaked on the victim. He's gone. He's not in pain, but it's the people that he left behind. And that's the thing that I don't understand, why, how people that commit violent acts don't stop and think about the tangential effects of their dastardly deeds. And then I look at this guy and, he could be one of my son's friends. He has the appearance of being kind of a regular guy, a nice person. I see him in that photograph at the hostel where he stayed, and he's smiling at the clerk. He just looks like somebody that, you could be friends with. He went to good schools. He was the valedictorian of his high school class. And then he's at University of Penn, he was a valedictorian, got an advanced degree. I think he is, to some extent, somebody that I have a little bit of empathy for, because what a waste of a life and promise. And it's all self-inflicted now. His life is over. And the whole thing is just tragic. But the insurance industry has some of the responsibility to bear, and they need to reform it. They need to get their act together.
So what I'm hearing you say here, John, is that the motive behind this horrible act is a result of frustrations of insurance in the medical community. And can you be a little bit more specific?
Well, the fact is, we don't know the backstory yet, but we do know that he etched in the bullets, deny, delay, and depose. And I have my best friend, he deals with the insurance day of his life. And we had a long conversation just a few minutes ago. And he said they are horrible, and that they play games, and that their goal is to collect as much as they can in premiums and deny as many of the claims as they can. That is not the United States that I grew up in. I had a claim 30 years ago, and it was a relatively minor claim. The adjuster came out and spent 30 minutes looking at the damage and said, "Mr. Gordon, I'm prepared to settle with you right here." And he took out the checkbook and wrote me a check. "Thank you very much." And it built such loyalty in me, something I would never let leave him. But the whole model is turned upside down now. The supposition is that he was denied an insurance claim. And I think he said that you're housing and taking care of illegals, and you're denying me coverage on a claim that is bona fide and genuine. And so I think that is the basis for that violence that he committed, but we won't know for a while, I think.
He's yet to be extradited to New York. Probably will happen, even though he's fighting that extradition. But if it gets into New York, that'll be into District Attorney Alvin Bragg's arena. How do you think that may go?
Bragg needs to go, I can tell you that. I mean, this guy has embodied the notion of lawfare. He used his authority recklessly, put this young man through, Penny, who is a good Samaritan. I've watched interview with Penny and Judge Jean on Fox last night. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a very good interview. He comes across as a very genuine, honest, truthful person to me that really put himself in harm's way to protect the people on this train who the victim, this alleged victim in quote, the deceased, was terrorizing and threatening to kill and injure. It's just so wrong. And then for Bragg to drag him through I don't know how long it's been, the months of trauma that he's brought into Penny's life for having stood up and put his own life at risk and safety at risk for the health and safety of the people on that train. It is a horrible miscarriage of justice.
How would New York remove their attorney general? How could that happen?
If I'm not mistaken, I don't know factually. I believe that the governor has the power to remove him. And I don't know what the justifiable causes for removal are. I would think that abuse of authority and violation of oath of office would be a justification. I don't know why Brian Kemp hasn't removed Fani Willis yet. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who shirked his duty. Here's another example of a leftist activist prosecutor who went after Donald Trump and, just like Letitia James, ran on the promise of getting Trump. And then you see all the abuses and her sleeping with the prosecutor that she hired, the special prosecutor she hired, paid him $800,000, went on vacations with him, and all at taxpayer expense, albeit circuitously from the money that her office paid the prosecutor, and then he takes her on a tryst and vacations to Miami and I'm over it. I'm so sick of it. And, now I'm a racist because I'm calling them to on the carpet about it. Well, I'm sorry. Call me whatever you want to. I'm going to stand for truth and justice.
I mean, she got reelected, but she's got some other problems now by not coming forth with information. Is she kind of painting herself into her own corner?
Totally. I mean, she's painted herself into a corner since this began. And the Court of Appeals was supposed to have oral arguments either last week or the week before on removing her from the case. I think they need to make a referral to the Georgia bar and take her law license away. The things that she has done violate the canons of ethics, state law, and any kind of decency of fairness, and she needs to go. And hopefully the Court of Appeals will do what the governor should have already done.
Does that case stay for a while? I mean, it really hasn't gone away, the case against President Trump. It really hasn't gone away there in that county. What happens to it?
Well, from a practical standpoint, it stayed until the Court of Appeals rules. They, as I was about to say, they canceled the oral arguments. I've appeared before the Georgia Court of Appeals, the Georgia Supreme Court. I understand the appellate process reasonably well. I think when a court suspends oral arguments, it tells you, we've already made up our mind. We don't need to hear anything from either of the lawyers. You're not going to add anything. You're not going to change our minds. My belief is that, look, I have tremendous trust in the Supreme Court of Georgia. The Court of Appeals seems to be a bit more political, maybe leaning a little more left. So I don't know what they're going to do. I only know what they should do, and that is remove her from the case, remove her from office, and make a referral to the bar to take her law license away. If I was a justice on that court, hour upon hour upon hour of the proceedings in Judge McAfee's court, he lacked the resolve to do what he should have done. He should have removed her. He punted because he was up for re-election. He didn't have the guts to do it. He had every right to remove Fani Willis from the case, and poor little judge, he couldn't bring himself to do it. So he punts it to the Court of Appeals, effectively to let them do his job for them. I think it's disgusting.
Who forces it to the Court of Appeals? Does the governor step in to a county deal like this, or does McAfee send? How does it get appealed?
Well, Judge McAfee, when he refused to Fani Willis, oh my gosh, I need to take a breath. McAfee is an appointee of Brian Kemp.
Okay.
And ruling that he could have. He said, okay, there's conflicts of interest here between you and Nathan Wade, who is the special prosecutor. One of you have to go. Well, which one went? Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor. Lover boy, you're out. I'm staying. And so, but then he provided in his order a provision allowing the other side, the defendants in the case, to file an interlocutory appeal to the Court of Appeals. And so he was basically just saying, Court of Appeals, I'm up for re-election. Here's the potato. It's too hot for me. You deal with it. And so now the Court of Appeals, the defendants filed a motion in the Court of Appeals to seek an interlocutory order, meaning while the case is ongoing, come referee this dispute and decide whether Fani Willis can stay on the case. So that's how it got there.
Pardoning of Hunter Biden by the president, and it's expected now. Last minute, family turns the light out in the Oval Office. But the actual pardoning of his son is a new one. I think it was expected. But does it really clear the president? I mean, doesn't that president and other people in the hot spot?
Well, he's old and he's senile, and people are going to feel sorry for him. So I don't think he's going to prosecute him. Although Kash Patel may investigate him and Pam Bondi may, but that remains to be seen. But I don't think we've seen anything yet like what we're going to see. I predict that there will be a slew of midnight pardons the last day that Biden is in office. I believe that he will pardon Mayorkas, who has been impeached by the House. The Senate wouldn't even conduct a hearing. Shame on them. First time in the nation's history that a official of our government has been hearing. If that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does. The Attorney General, I am certain that he has lied to Congress and that he has abused his authority and engaged in law. I think that we will see pardons of Jim Biden and others. That's a pretty good list. I'm not sure how far he will go. He's basically toast. He is a man on an island. Republicans despise him, don't like him. He's a man without a party now, and I like him better in the last 60 days than I did the entire 4 years, because suddenly he's starting to speak the truth and become more honest with the American people.
If the president at the last minute is going to do midnight pardons, you mentioned possibly the Attorney General, his brother Jim, other names that have popped up, Mayorkas, Adam Schiff, who just became from California, Liz Cheney, and some others that were involved in January 6th. These would be preemptive pardons. Isn't a preemptive pardon an admission?
Well, an admission, do we really need an admission? Do we need a mea culpa from any of these people, their office, and that they have lied to the American people and that they have engaged in unethical behavior that at a minimum violates the canons of ethics of the bar that they get their law license from, but certainly they have violated statutes of the United States Code of Annotated Code. So I don't think we need a confession in order to determine their guilt or innocence.
Pardon. That assumes they were guilty of something. Right?
I think you're absolutely right. I understand the point that you're making, and and I totally agree with you. I guess it's kind of like clear all the dust off the window and move forward, and so that they're not going to have to deal with what they put their political opponents through for the last 4 years.
John Gordon. John is the host of his own radio program called The Truth with John Gordon. He previously was a Republican candidate for the Attorney General there in the state of Georgia and did receive president endorsements. Well, we got more to talk to him about when we come back.